I think the first thing we need to talk about is fundamentally what is a mezzanine loan. I'm going to walk over to the board and we're going to explain exactly what a mezzanine loan is. There are two fundamental aspects of a mezzanine loan. The first is the loan is not actually to the entity that owns the property. The loan will always be to an entity, an upper tier entity that owns an interest in the entity that owns the property. So in our example over here we have One Park Place, that's the property. We have a limited liability company, One Park Place LLC, which owns One Park Place. We have an entity, One Park Place Holdings LLC, which owns 100% of One Park Place. It's the sole member of this entity. Typical loan, you have a mortgage loan. Mortgage lender makes a loan to the entity which owns the property. In exchange for that loan, it receives a mortgage back on the property. Mezzanine loan, by contrast, is a loan not to the entity which owns the property, but up here to the upper tier entity which owns an interest in the entity which owns the property. That's why it's called a mezzanine loan, because it's upper level. It's an upper level loan. That's the first fundamental issue. First fundamental characteristic of a mezzanine loan. The second fundamental characteristic of a mezzanine loan is that the mezzanine lender does not receive a mortgage on the property, or in fact any kind of lien on the property. Unlike the mortgage lender who receives a mortgage on the property, the mezzanine lender, as its primary source of security, will receive a pledge of the interests of this entity in the entity which owns the property. Consequently, when the mezzanine lender, if it's forced to foreclose on its pledge, will end up owning this entity which owns the property, and thereby will be able to control the property. It's very important to keep that in mind, though, that it does not have a lien on the property, as that's a fundamental distinguishing characteristic of what a mezzanine loan is. Mezzanine lender and the mortgage lender will also enter into an intercreditor agreement, which will be the document which primarily describes the relationship of the mezzanine lender and the mortgage lender. We will talk about that agreement later in this lecture at great length, because it's a very important document. It's very important to understand the issues between the mezz lender and the mortgage lender.